Hi everyone, it's Campbell from Wave Shaper, and today this is an instructional video on how to install our P20SB mod kit. So let's get right into it. Before starting, make sure the planer is disconnected from any power supply. I've already done that. Also remove the blades, so just follow your planer's instruction manual on how to do that. So now we're ready to start the disassembly process. So we'll start off with the front shoe. It's very easy to take apart, just turn the knob anti-clockwise until it disconnects. And then just remove the front shoe. Take the spring out and the foam dust shield as well. So these three components, you can just put those to one side, we won't need those anymore. Moving on, we need to take off the dust deflector, so we'll do that. Next is the bearing cover. Grab yourself a flathead screwdriver and just remove the brush caps and take the brushes out. So you've got two of them. Alrighty, flip the planer over. Now I just need to take off the belt cover. So to take off the belt, just pull it off to one side and then rotate. And then it just comes off. So now we need to remove these 5 screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alrighty, so everything has been disconnected for us to remove the motor housing. So the easiest way to do that is to grab yourself a Phillips head screwdriver, and you can see in here there's these little holes. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert the Phillips head screwdriver into this, and then grab yourself a mallet and lightly tap on the end here. And the idea is you alternate between the two, so you move this one a little bit, then you move the armature one. We now need to remove our cutter head assembly and our armature from the motor housing. So to do that, we will need to remove this pulley here. So the easiest way to do that is you will need a 3mm pin wrench, an adjustable one like this. In the past, I've also used an adjustable angle grinder wrench and filed down the tips so that they insert into these holes here. So grip the cutting assembly, grab your pin wrench, just insert them in the holes and turn this anti-clockwise, and it will just unscrew. Just wriggle the assembly back and forth, and then it will just pop out like so. Now for the armature, you don't need to remove this pulley, this will just come out by wriggling it back and forth. Now say you wanted to replace your bearings, you will need to remove this, so I'll just show you how to do that, pretty straightforward. This is a left-hand thread, meaning you have to turn clockwise to unscrew. So if you want to replace your bearings while you're at it, that's how you access them. With everything now disassembled, we can move on to preparing the front shoe. And so our first step in doing that is we will need to drill this center threaded rod out. And the way to do that is to grab a 12mm drill bit with a drill press and drill through this hole here. So I'll quickly go out the back and show you that process. Our front shoe is fresh off the drill press. I've also obviously cleaned it and I've sanded the chamfer groove with 80 grit sandpaper. So now we can flip it over and place our jig over the top to create the outline at the front. So just grab yourself a permanent marker, make sure it's square and lined up, and then just mark the outline. Alrighty, so now we can prep the front shoe to fill in the drilled hole and the chamfer groove with some JB Weld. So first step is to block off the main hole through here. So grab yourself some masking tape. So now I'll just prep the top part. So easiest way to trim the excess is just grab a razor blade and trace the hole. That way you get a nice clean edge. Alrighty, so we've got it all prepped. I did also clean it with IPA before I started, so that's all clean and ready to go. So I'll just mix up some JB Weld and then I'll fill this in. Okay, so I'm going to let that cure for a little bit, let it firm up. I'll then grab a razor blade and then I'll just remove the excess. While the JB Weld cures in our front shoe, now is the perfect chance to drill the holes for our dust adapter. So go ahead and grab your jig, which looks like this, and just place it over the top. So it's important that this curve of the housing also lines up with the jig, so just about there, and also it's pushed up against the corner here. So I've already marked my 3 holes. So I'm just going to grab a 3mm drill bit and get those drilled. So with the holes drilled, we can put the housing off to one side and we can now prep our motor housing and our dust deflector. So this is a housing that is stock, so we do need to remove a little bit of material, basically just through here. And so this is one that has been sanded, and so you can see the difference. So we're basically sanding till we reach down to this part through here. And as for the deflector, you can see we're basically removing just this part here so that this corner is nice and flush. So I'll go out the back and do those. We're now ready to put our motor housing back into the planer. So first step is to grab your cutting head and place it inside. And grab your big pulley and screw this on clockwise. Next, grab the armature and place that inside. And then the pulley. And turn this anti-clockwise. Perfect. Grab your bearing cover and place that in. So flip the planer on its side and then just insert the housing, making sure that it's lined up. So it should just click into place. Grab your 5 screws and tighten them up. Next, grab the belt and twist that on. Grab the belt cover, place that over the top and tighten it down. So just grab your brushes and reinstall them. Last step is to install our adapter. So keep the planer on its side and tighten down with these screws. Perfect. I've let the JB Weld cure for a number of hours, so it's now ready for us to shape the front part of the shoe that we outlined earlier. The easiest way to do this is with a bench disc sander. If you don't have that, you can use an angle grinder with a flap disc. Obviously you want to leave yourself a bit more margin for error. Me personally, I remove the bulk with a bench disc sander, and then that's easier to clean it up as well. One last thing, make sure the JB Weld is flush for the base of this, otherwise the depth control won't work properly. So if there's a little bit of excess, make sure you sand that flat and it's below the height of the metal part at the bottom. So make sure that that's taken care of. Once I've done the curve at the front, I will also round the edges as well. The front shoe is taking shape, so now we just need to test fit this back into the planer. So tilt it on its side and just insert the front shoe. So what you're looking for is some medium resistance, and this one here is perfect. Sometimes the interference fit is a little bit too tight, so you'll need to grab some 400 grit sandpaper and sand the outer diameter of this. You don't want to sand this too much because then the front shoe will become too sloppy inside the planer. Luckily for me, I don't have to do any sanding, and most of the P20SBs I've worked on, I haven't had to do that as well. So I've just got my bottom part of my depth control out of the plastic bag along with my cover that sits over the top like this. And so now we just need to test fit this into the front shoe. Now this is a very important step. If this isn't done properly, then the depth control won't work as designed. So grab the bottom part of your depth control here and just place that in to the front shoe. Now, for it to work properly, this needs to be pushed all the way down to the bottom. And so to check that, just simply look down there and see if there's a gap. So I can see this one here isn't getting down all the way to the bottom. So to fix that, I'll need to sand the inside diameter of this front shoe a little bit and then retest this again. The dimensions inside here are all slightly different depending on your front shoe. So sometimes you can test fit this and you won't need to do any sanding, sometimes you will. I've also seen some where they have sort of half circles every 90 degrees apart that are raised a little bit. You would need to remove those as well, but that's not a big issue. So I'm going to quickly sand the inside of this a little bit and then I'm going to test fit this again. That's now fitting really nicely into the front shoe. I can see that it's going all the way down to the bottom, and I can lift this up and down. I can feel it's not catching on any sides or anything like that. I did actually have a Dremel out the back with a sanding bit as well, which makes this a little bit easier if you have that, but you don't need to. So with that now fitting really nice, we'll move our attention to the dust cover. So as I said, the inner diameter of these are all going to be slightly different, so you might need to sand yours a little bit. This one here was a bit of a tighter fit, so I did grab some sandpaper and sand the outside diameter. As for how this should fit, you don't want this to be very hard to be pushed in, but you do want some light resistance, so you don't want it just to fall right into place. So this right here is perfect. So there's light resistance when I push it in, and once you do that, this should sit flush with the top part of the front shoe. The O-ring will be slightly raised though. So that's all looking really good. So I'll go ahead and remove these. And now we can get ready to glue our depth control into the front shoe. Everything's now prepped. I've sanded the inside diameter here with some 80 grit sandpaper, and I've made sure there's no raised bits of metal or JB weld at the base. The depth control has also been sanded, the outside part here, with some 80 grit sandpaper, and a dry lubricant has been applied to the inner workings. Don't use a wet lubricant like grease, so a dry lubricant is what you want to use. PTFE spray would be fine. The front shoe inside here has also been cleaned with IPA, and same with the OD of the depth control, just to make sure that you get a nice clean surface for when you apply the JB weld. So what I'll do is I'll put on some gloves and then we'll glue this into the front shoe. When applying the JB weld, if you push it away from you, this will stop the depth control from coming apart. So just do this until you have a uniform coat all the way around. You don't need to do this too thick, just a nice uniform coat that covers all the areas. So you want to make sure that you line it up. and press all the way down. So it's also important that you hold the depth control in the most anti-clockwise position and then push all the way down nice and firm until it hits the bottom. So what we'll need to do now is to make sure that this is glued in perpendicular and not on an angle. So just look down to the front shoe and make sure that that's nice and straight on all the angles. So that's perfect. Don't worry about this excess at the moment. So what we'll do is wait for it to firm up a little bit, and then you can easily remove that with a food skewer or a very small flathead screwdriver. To install the cover, which is the one with the O-ring, grab also the install tool, which looks like this. Now this has been sanded with some 80 grit sandpaper and also has been cleaned with RPA, so it's a clean surface from when we put a little bit of JB Weld on that. Just hold the cover like this and then just place a small amount of JB Weld with your finger around the circumference. So the coat doesn't have to be very thick, just make sure that it's all the way around. So just gently place the cover over the top. Grab your tool, face it this way down, and it will just slide over the top. And then just use that to push all the way down. So we do have a little bit of JB Weld left, which can just be cleaned up, but you want to make sure that this is pressed nice and hard down to the bottom and it can't move anymore. So telltale sign is that the cover will be in line with the top part of the front shoe. So I'm just going to grab some paper towel and clean up the excess. So wait for that to dry. In the meantime, don't turn this top part, just let it sit and dry. We're now ready to reinstall our front shoe back into the planer. I have already drilled this hole here with a 13mm drill bit, just so it accepts this slightly thicker part. Also make sure there's no burrs or sharp edges underneath. Now I quickly want to talk about blades. So a lot of the time the planers from the factory don't come calibrated properly, so I would highly recommend that you readjust your blades. What you're looking for is you want the blades to be at essentially the same height as the rear base and also even from side to side. I've already done that on this planer here, so I know that I can move forward. So just grab your upgraded foam dust shield. You will have two rounded corners at the front here, so it goes on like that. Now we also have our spacers over here. So this is important so that we can index our front shoe to the rear base. Your planer will most likely take a different washer than this one, but for the meantime, just start with something in the middle like a 12. So grab that with the smooth side facing up, and then just place that into the planer. Make sure that the thread rod is turned in the most anti-clockwise position. Just place your shaft collar washer smooth side down, and then the shaft collar. And screw the nut down, as this will keep everything together as we finish the calibration. Tilt the planer on its side and just grab a straight edge or a ruler and place that along the length of the planer. Now I can see here that I have a gap under my rear base, which tells me that my front shoe is sitting too low and I'll need to try a thinner washer. If it's the other way around, where you have a gap under your front shoe, then you need to try a thicker washer to lower it. So basically what we're trying to achieve here is we want the front shoe and rear base to be both at the same level. I've already done that off camera and I know that I need a number 6 spacer, so I'll go ahead and install that. So once again, make sure it's in the most anti-clockwise position. Place the shaft collar washer smooth side down and then the shaft collar. Now if you plan on using the ball and stem, now's the time to calibrate that. So grab the longest length rod and screw the ball onto the end and then screw that into the shaft collar. Grab your nut and then screw that down. Now if you like a bit of a firmer feeling when you turn the depth control knob, you can screw this nut down a little bit tighter. What I would recommend is to screw it down just so it touches the shaft collar and then see if you prefer that. Once again, you can just play around and see what you like. So now with that nut installed, we can position our shaft collar and ball and stem. So most people usually have it on the left hand side for a 0 cut, so I'll just place it there. Next, grab a 9/64 hex wrench and then tighten down the bolt. You can remove the nut and then install the knob. So it doesn't have to be too tight, just so it's snug. Next step, also just push in the elbow. Now, some shapers might want the blades to clear the foam from a larger distance. If that's the case, you just need to select a slightly thicker washer. The conversion is now done and the planer is ready to mold some foam. If you decided to use the ball and stem, that will just need to be glued in with a bit of JB Weld. Other than that, thanks for watching.